October 14, 1943. 5:30 in the morning. RAF Bassingbourn, England. The darkness over the airfield feels thick, almost heavy enough to touch. A cold mist hangs low across the runway lights, turning each bulb into a pale halo. Somewhere beyond the fog, engines cough to life. One, then another, then a dozen more. Second Lieutenant Daniel Harper stands beneath the wing of a B-17 Flying Fortress, collar turned up against the damp chill. He is 23 years old, a bombardier from Ohio, and this is his 10th mission. He tells himself that number matters. 10 feels seasoned, 10 feels survivable. Above him, ground crew members move quickly, their boots splashing through shallow puddles. A crew chief runs a hand along the aluminum fuselage as if calming a restless animal. The bomber carries a name painted beneath the cockpit window, Liberty Bell. The paint is still bright. The aircraft is not yet a veteran. From across the field comes the rising thunder of engines turning over in sequence. The sound rolls through the fog like distant artillery. It builds and builds until conversation becomes impossible. 800 bombers across eastern England are preparing to take off. B-17s and B-24s. Men in heavy flight jackets climb narrow ladders, duck into cramped compartments, check oxygen lines, test guns. You would feel it in your chest if you were standing there. The vibration of that many engines idling at once. The knowledge that something enormous is about to move. Captain Robert Ellison, the pilot, pulls himself into the left seat. He is calm in the ways only experienced men can appear calm. His co-pilot, First Lieutenant Samuel Ortiz, runs through the checklist aloud. No one rushes. They do not need to. The schedule has been carved in stone since midnight. At 5:58, the first flare arcs into the dim sky. Green, the signal. One by one, bombers roll forward into the fog. Tires hiss on damp concrete. The engines strain, then roar at full power. Heavy aircraft lumber down the runway, nose lifting slowly, almost reluctantly. Then the wheels leave England. Daniel feels the lift in his stomach as Liberty Bell climbs. The world below vanishes into cloud. He glances down through the clear nose at nothing but gray. The mission briefing still echoes in his mind. Targets, aircraft factories in Regensburg and ball-bearing plants in Schweinfurt. Deep inside Germany, far beyond the protective reach of friendly fighters for most of the route. The plan is bold, perhaps too bold. The bombers will fly in tight formations for protection. They call it the combat box, interlocking fields of fire, machine guns pointing outward in every direction. The theory is simple. No fighter can break through a wall of coordinated fire. The theory has not yet been fully tested this far inside enemy territory. As the formation assembles above the clouds, the sky begins to fill. Shapes emerge from the mist, silver wings sliding into position, tail numbers aligning, bombers stack high and wide until the air itself seems crowded. From Daniel, his position in the nose, he can see aircraft stretching to the horizon. Sunlight finally breaks over the cloud tops, turning the upper surfaces of the wings into sheets of gold. For a moment, it is almost beautiful. 800 heavy bombers moving east. Below them lies the English Channel, calm and gray. Beyond that, Europe. In another aircraft, several miles away, Technical Sergeant Frank Miller checks the feed on his waist gun. He has flown 12 missions. He has seen friends fail to return. He knows what happens when the formation thins. Inside Liberty Bell, the interphone crackles. Crossing the coast, Captain Ellison says, the bombers leave friendly airspace and push toward Belgium. American P-47 fighters escort them for part of the journey, darting around the formation like protective hawks. But fuel limits dictate reality. The fighters will turn back long before the deepest targets. Daniel studies the bomb site. He adjusts small knobs with gloved fingers, careful and deliberate. Below the cloud layer, towns and rivers pass unnoticed. The mood inside the aircraft shifts as the sun climbs higher. Conversation fades. Oxygen masks hang ready. Flak suits feel heavier. They all know what waits ahead. German radar stations have already detected the incoming armada. Sirens are likely sounding in cities far beyond the horizon. Fighter pilots are scrambling. Anti-aircraft crews are manning guns. The sky that looked peaceful above England will not remain so. At 9:30 in the morning, the first black puffs appear in the distance. Small at first, harmless looking. Daniel leans forward, eyes narrowing. Flak. Within minutes, the sky ahead begins to bloom with dark bursts. Each one marks a shell exploding at altitude, designed to tear metal apart. The formation does not turn. It cannot. Precision and discipline are survival. Captain Ellison grips the controls, steady hands. Hold formation, he says quietly. The first shells detonate close enough for Liberty Bell to shudder. The sound is sharp, metallic, like giant hammers striking the airframe. Daniel feels the aircraft tremble. He smells cordite even through the oxygen mask. Below, Germany rises to meet them. The sky is about to turn black. 9:45 in the morning, high above western Germany. The first explosion that truly matters does not look different from the others. It blooms off the right wing, a dark flower against blue sky. Then the aircraft to their 2 o'clock position jerks violently. A B-17 drops out of formation, one engine trailing thick gray smoke. Each explosion leaves a smear of black smoke that lingers, turning the sky into a dirty curtain. The Germans have calculated the altitude well. Below them, anti-aircraft batteries fire in coordinated patterns. Shells rise in timed arcs and detonate directly in the bomber stream. The sound reaches the crews a split second after each flash. A hollow crack, then a sharp metallic rattle as fragments strike aluminum skin. Technical Sergeant Frank Miller, miles away in another aircraft, braces his boots against the floor as his bomber shudders. He sees a wingtip from the plane above him snap inward, metal folding like paper. That aircraft drops away, spinning slowly, pieces tearing off in the slipstream. There is no time to watch. Fighter callouts crackle across the formation frequency. Bandits at 3 o'clock high. They come in fast. Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulf 190. Fighters slice down from above, sunlight glinting off their wings. They do not linger. They dive, fire, and climb away. Their guns are aimed at engines and cockpits. The theory of the combat box meets reality. Waist gunners swing their machine guns outward. The sky fills with crossing streams of tracer fire. Bright lines stitch the air between bombers and fighters. The sound inside the aircraft becomes constant, a violent drumming of engines, gunfire, and bursting shells. Daniel feels Liberty Bell lurch as Captain Ellison makes tiny corrections to maintain position. Drifting out of formation means isolation. Isolation means death. Another shell detonates close enough to rattle his teeth. A fragment punches through the nose cone with a sharp crack, spraying splinters of plexiglass across his jacket. He flinches, but stays at his post. Behind him, Samuel Ortiz reports engine temperature steady. One engine reads slightly high, but still within limits. They are lucky, for now. The first group of bombers turns slightly toward Regensburg. The formation stretches as aircraft maneuver around damaged machines struggling to keep up. Some bombers fall behind, wounded and slow. German fighters circle them like wolves. In Frank Miller, his aircraft, a scream cuts through the interphone. The top turret gunner has been hit by shrapnel. The co-pilot leaves his seat long enough to drag the wounded man down into the fuselage. There is blood on the floor. There is no medic, only pressure bandages and hope. Frank keeps firing. The sky grows darker, not from weather, but from smoke. Hundreds of flak bursts hang suspended around the formation. From a distance, the bomber stream must look like it is flying through a thunderstorm made of iron. At 10:30, the first formation reaches Regensburg. Daniel lies flat behind the Norden bomb site. He flips the switch that gives him control of the aircraft during the bomb run. Captain Ellison releases the yoke, hands hovering nearby but not touching. Below, the Messerschmitt factory spreads across the landscape. Long buildings, rail lines, smoke already rising from earlier impacts. The flak intensifies. German gunners know the bombers must fly straight and level for accurate drops. This is their moment. The aircraft shakes violently as explosions bracket them. A burst detonates just beneath the left wing. The engine sputters, then steadies. A warning light flickers and goes dark. Daniel adjusts for wind drift. His world narrows to crosshairs and numbers. The noise fades to a distant roar. Bomb bay doors open. Cold air floods through the fuselage. The bomber feels suddenly lighter, unstable. Steady, steady. He makes the final correction. Bombs away. The aircraft jerks upward as thousands of pounds fall free. Daniel watches through the sight as the bombs tumble toward the factory below. A heartbeat later, flashes bloom across the complex. Columns of smoke rise. Captain Ellison takes control again and banks hard to exit the target area. But the mission is only half complete. The second wave continues toward Schweinfurt, ball-bearing plants that feed the German war machine. Without bearings, tanks and aircraft cannot move. The distance between Regensburg and Schweinfurt stretches the formation thin. Coordination begins to fray. Some bombers are alone now, strung out across hostile sky. German fighters exploit every gap. Daniel sees one B-24 engulfed in flames, wings breaking apart midair. Parachutes appear beneath it, small white blossoms against dark smoke. He counts 3, then loses sight of them. Inside Liberty Bell, the crew checks damage. Hydraulic pressure is stable, fuel levels acceptable. One small hole near the nose. No casualties. They are among the fortunate. As the formation turns west, heading back toward England, the worst realization settles in. The fighters have not finished, and the long flight home will be even more dangerous than the approach. 11:20 in the morning, somewhere west of Schweinfurt. The bombers turn for home, but home is far beyond the horizon. The formation is thinner now. Gaps mark the spaces where aircraft once flew wingtip to wingtip. Smoke trails carve dark lines across the sky. Some drift downward in slow spirals. Others end abruptly. Inside Liberty Bell, the mood has shifted. The bomb run is complete, yet no one relaxes. Captain Robert Ellison keeps his eyes locked on the instruments and the shrinking cluster of aircraft ahead. His jaw is tight. The interphone crackles with fragmented reports. Engine out on number 3. Navigator wounded. Low fuel. Fighters forming again. Daniel Harper pulls himself back from the bomb site and crawls toward the nose window. His gloves are streaked with oil and dust. He wipes a patch of plexiglass clear with his sleeve. Below, farmland slides past. Small towns. Fields cut into neat patterns. It would look peaceful if not for the columns of smoke rising in the distance. The P-47 escorts that protected them earlier are gone. Fuel limits force them back toward England long before the bombers reach their deepest targets. Now, over central Germany, the 8th Air Force flies alone. And the German pilots know it. The next attack comes without warning. From low 6 o'clock, a formation of Focke-Wulf 190 fighters climbs hard, firing upward into the bellies of the bombers. The angle is deadly. The American gunners struggle to track them. Technical Sergeant Frank Miller braces as tracer rounds rip through the fuselage of his aircraft. A burst punches through the radio compartment. The radio operator slumps forward, headset falling loose. Frank feels a surge of anger, sharp and hot. He squeezes the trigger and walks his fire across the nose of an approaching fighter. He sees sparks on its engine cowling. The German aircraft rolls away, trailing smoke. There is no cheer, only breathing. Inside Liberty Bell, the ball turret gunner calls out targets, voice strained but steady. Daniel hears the clatter of 50 caliber machine guns from beneath his feet. The aircraft vibrates with each burst. Then a heavy jolt slams through the fuselage. Hit on the right wing, Samuel Ortiz reports. Captain Ellison fights the controls as the bomber dips, then steadies. One engine begins to run rough, coughing black smoke into the slipstream. They cannot fall behind. Ellison reduces power slightly on the remaining engines to balance thrust. Airspeed drops. The formation inches ahead. Daniel feels the terrible temptation to look back and watch for fighters. Instead, he focuses on scanning the sky ahead. The oxygen mask presses tight against his face. Every breath tastes faintly metallic. Below them, flak batteries near Frankfurt open fire. Black bursts erupt again, though less concentrated than over the targets. Even so, one shell detonates close enough to pepper the tail section with fragments. The tail gunner cries out. A moment of silence follows. "Still here," he says finally, voice thin but controlled. The crew does not respond with relief. They simply continue. Hour after hour, the attacks repeat. Fighters approach in waves, breaking off only to regroup and return. Some make head-on passes, guns blazing directly into the noses of the bombers. Those moments are the worst. Daniel experiences one of them face to face. A Messerschmitt appears dead ahead, growing larger at impossible speed. Its propeller spins like a blurred disc. Daniel can see the pilot for a split second, then muzzle flashes flicker from the fighter wings. Daniel fires. The nose compartment fills with deafening noise. Tracers streak forward. The German aircraft flashes past beneath them, so close Daniel feels he could reach out and touch its canopy. When he looks back, the fighter is diving away, trailing smoke. Liberty Bell shudders again. A warning light glows steadily now. The damaged engine is losing power. Captain Ellison makes a decision. "We drop out, we die," he says quietly. "We stay with them. They stay." By early afternoon, the bomber stream crosses back over Belgium. Some aircraft limp along on one engine. Others trail smoke but maintain altitude. The formation is ragged, wounded but moving. At last, dark shapes appear ahead. P-47, Thunderbolts climbing to meet them near the coast. The sight draws the first genuine exhale from several crews. Frank Miller watches friendly fighters sweep past, chasing off the last German interceptors. The sky feels suddenly larger, less suffocating. But the cost has already been paid. As the channel comes into view, Daniel counts aircraft around them. He remembers how crowded the sky looked over England that morning. Now there are empty spaces where squadrons once flew. No one speaks about numbers yet. Fuel gauges hover near minimum. Engines run hot. The wounded aircraft press on. When Liberty Bell finally crosses the English coastline, the sun is low in the western sky. The light turns the aluminum wings orange. For a moment, everything looks calm again. But the silence inside the aircraft feels heavier than the noise ever did. They know some friends will not follow them home. 4:30 in the afternoon. RAF Bassingbourn, England. The first returning bombers appear as distant specks over the flat English countryside. Ground crews step out of maintenance huts and shield their eyes against the low sun. They count shapes automatically, lips moving without sound. 1, 2, 3, they keep counting. Liberty Bell approaches the field at reduced speed, right engine still coughing faint trails of smoke. Captain Robert Ellison lowers the landing gear. The wheels lock into place with a heavy clunk that echoes through the fuselage. Daniel Harper feels the descent in his stomach. His hands ache from gripping metal braces for hours. When the runway finally fills the nose window, it feels unreal. Too still. Too quiet. The bomber touches down hard. Tires screech. The aircraft rolls, wobbles slightly, then steadies as it slows along the concrete strip. No one cheers. As they taxi toward their hard stand, Daniel looks out at the rows of empty parking spaces. Painted outlines wait for aircraft that will not return before sunset. The sight is more unsettling than flak bursts. Crew chiefs run toward the arriving bombers, scanning fuselages for damage. They count bullet holes. They point at shredded control surfaces. They wave the aircraft into position with urgent hand signals. Liberty Bell comes to a stop. Engines wind down one by one. The roar fades into ticking metal and distant aircraft still landing. For a moment, no one moves. Then the crew unclips harnesses and climbs down into the cool evening air. Daniel pulls off his oxygen mask. The smell of fuel and scorched oil lingers in his clothes. He looks back at the nose of the aircraft. A jagged hole marks the plexiglass where flak tore through. He runs his hand along the edge. It feels sharp. Captain Ellison walks around the bomber slowly, inspecting damage. He counts dozens of small punctures along the wing and fuselage. One engine cowling is dented and blackened. "You brought her back," the crew chief says quietly. Ellison nods, but his eyes drift toward the runway. Aircraft continue to land, though not as many as expected. Ambulances idle near the edge of the field. Stretchers wait. Across the base, men gather in small groups. Some talk rapidly, voices tight with adrenaline. Others sit alone on overturned crates, staring at the ground. Technical Sergeant Frank Miller steps off his aircraft with stiff legs. He glances toward the radio compartment where the radio operator had been hit. Medics move carefully, faces expressionless. Frank removes his gloves and realizes his hands are shaking. In the operations building, officers begin the slow task of tallying losses. The numbers arrive in fragments. Aircraft missing, aircraft confirmed down, crews unaccounted for. The figures climb steadily. By evening, the scale becomes undeniable. On this day, during the second Schweinfurt mission, the 8th Air Force has lost 60 B-17 bombers. Hundreds of airmen are dead, wounded, or captured. Entire crews are gone. The room grows quiet as the final reports settle. Back on the flight line, Daniel sits on the edge of a maintenance platform, boots dangling above the concrete. The sky that carried 800 bombers that morning is now streaked with soft pink clouds. It looks harmless again. He tries to picture the aircraft that did not return. He sees faces instead. The navigator from the next squadron who traded cigarettes with him before takeoff. The tail gunner who joked about counting missions like baseball scores. There is no dramatic speech, no triumphant music, only absence. Yet something else lingers in the air as well. The mission struck deep into the heart of German industry. Factories were damaged. Production slowed, even if only temporarily. The cost was staggering, but the message was clear. American bombers could reach into the core of the Reich in daylight. Still, commanders understand a hard truth. Without long-range fighter escort, losses like this cannot continue. The strategy must change, or the crews will be spent faster than aircraft can be built. In the fading light, Captain Ellison gathers his crew for a brief word. "You did your job," he says simply. "We all did." He does not mention the empty hard stands behind them. He does not need to. As darkness settles over Bassingbourn, mechanics begin patching holes in Liberty Bell. Fresh aluminum panels are riveted into place. Oil lines are replaced. Ammunition belts are reloaded. The base prepares for another mission. Because the war does not pause for grief. Daniel lies in his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. The sound of engines still echoes in his ears. He counts missions in his head. 10 completed. 15 more required before rotation home if he makes it. Outside, the wind moves softly across the runway where 800 bombers once lined up before dawn. The sky is clear again, but everyone on that base knows what it can become. Winter settles over England in slow, gray waves. By December 1943, the fields around RAF Bassingbourn are slick with frost. The bombers still launch before dawn. The engines still shake the windows. But something inside the 8th Air Force has shifted. The October missions to Schweinfurt and Regensburg did more than scar factories. They exposed a flaw in the daylight strategy. Courage alone could not shield aluminum from concentrated fighter attacks. Tight formations could not replace escort fighters with longer range. In briefing rooms lit by yellow bulbs, planners redraw maps. Routes are studied again and again. Lost charts line the walls. Red marks cluster deep over Germany. Daniel Harper attends another mission briefing in early February 1944. The room is quiet as an intelligence officer points toward Berlin on a large wall map. This time, however, there is a new line sketched alongside the bomber route. Long-range fighter escort. The P-51 Mustang has arrived in numbers. For months, engineers and commanders pushed for a fighter that could travel with the bombers all the way to target and back. Now that aircraft stands on the same English soil, its sleek frame a contrast to the heavy bombers it will protect. Captain Robert Ellison studies one parked near the runway later that afternoon. Its lines are narrow and purposeful. It looks less like a fortress and more like a blade. Technical Sergeant Frank Miller watches as P-51 pilots gather for their own briefing. They are younger on average, confident, eager. But the tone across the base is different now. Less desperate, more determined. February 22, 1944. Operation Argument. The beginning of what will be called Big Week. Before dawn, Daniel once again climbs into the nose of Liberty Bell. The aircraft has fresh panels along the fuselage where flak once tore through. The paint around the name has been touched up. She looks ready. But the memory of October lingers in every movement. As engines ignite across the field, Daniel notices something new. To the side of the heavy bombers, squadrons of P-51 Mustangs warm their engines too. Their propellers spin in tight, controlled arcs. At takeoff, they rise together. Over the channel, the formation assembles once more, hundreds of bombers, hundreds of fighters weaving around them. This time, when German radar stations detect the incoming wave, the response is similar. Fighters scramble, anti-aircraft crews prepare, but the sky will not belong to one side alone. Deep over Germany, as flak begins to burst among the bombers, German fighters move into attack. They climb toward the formation, expecting isolated heavy aircraft. Instead, they meet Mustangs head-on. Daniel sees it from the nose window. Silver streaks diving and climbing in tight turns, contrails twisting. The fight unfolds farther from the bomber formation than before. The German pilots are forced to defend themselves before they can concentrate on the bombers. Inside Liberty Bell, the difference is tangible. There is still flak. There is still tension. But the relentless waves of fighter passes are broken apart. The bombers hold formation more easily. The sky, while still violent, no longer feels one-sided. Frank Miller tracks a distant dogfight with his eyes as his aircraft flies steady toward target. He realizes something unexpected. For the first time, he is not waiting for the next attack with the same helpless certainty. The bomb run over German aircraft factories during Big Week is still dangerous. Shells still explode close enough to rattle teeth, but losses are lower. Fighters escort the bombers nearly to the targets and back again. By the end of February 1944, German aircraft production facilities have taken severe damage. More importantly, the German fighter force has been drawn into repeated battles. Experienced pilots are lost. Replacements are rushed into combat with limited training. The balance in the air begins to tilt. Daniel completes his 15th mission in March, then his 20th. Each time, the formation returns with fewer empty gaps than in October. The cost is still real. War does not become gentle, but the strategy has adapted. Years later, historians will point to the autumn of 1943 as a turning point. The daylight raids that once seemed unsustainable forced innovation. They pushed for longer-range escorts. They reshaped the air war over Europe. But in the moment, none of that feels historic. It feels personal. On a clear morning in late spring, Daniel stands beside Liberty Bell as another formation climbs into a blue sky. He's no longer the uncertain bombardier from Ohio who boarded his 10th mission in fear. He carries the memory of black flak clouds and empty hard stands. He understands the cost behind every engine that roars overhead. If you look up at that sky in 1944, you would still see hundreds of bombers. The sound would still shake the ground. The risk would still be real. Yet something has changed. The day 800 bombers turned the sky black over Germany did not end the war. It did not break the enemy in a single stroke. But it marked the moment when the air war demanded evolution. Courage met reality. Loss forced adaptation. And from that harsh lesson came a strategy that would carry Allied aircraft all the way to the final year of the war. As the sun sets over the English fields, the sky's quiet once more. No flak, no fighters, only wind moving across empty runways. The men who flew into that darkness carry the memory for the rest of their lives. The sky can look peaceful until engines begin to roar.